Yeah, me too.
Hey,
I can hear you. Uh-huh.
And the standard is, what's the standard? Yeah, it's the voice meter. Hello, hello. Yeah, now it works. Okay. So, and if you say something, can you speak?
Hello?
Yes. Okay, good. Now we're good to go. I'm sorry about that. I was sometimes I just mess around with these settings and then nothing kind of works. So, but now I am back at it. Okay, good. Yes. Now I see everything is up and running. All right. So uh, we we were doing a bit of coding on the BMI functionality, right? So let me just check my branch. I should be good on that. Let me just go over to uh, my GitHub account, and we fulfilled everything that we wanted to do. So we can safely merge the branch that we worked on yesterday. Um, let's see, we have one pull request here, and we should be ready to get that one merged. That's functionality to calculate the BMI value. I, you know, it's a matter of definition, of course. Am I done or am I not done? Well, in principle, the we are calculating the BMI value, which is the what we set out to do, and we have a test here that calculates some sort of a value. One thing that we could do here is to work on some error handlers, for instance. Let's say that the person is trying to um, click the calculate button without actually inputting any of the values, right? That would, uh, that would render an error, of course, right? So we do not have, we're not prepared for that eventuality in any way. So that's a flaw, in my opinion. There are multiple ways to deal with that. For instance, we could uh, we could um, we could disable the button unless there is a value, right? And we could also check whether the value is actually numeric, and so it's not like a text or something. And you know, there are multiple ways to deal with that. I will, however, not deal with this by choice in this PR, right? When I will just, since this is a demo and I'm not really I didn't set out to build a fully featured BMI calculator, but it's important to know about the limitations of this implementation. That it is working, but it is not in any way 100% you know, okay and 100% done. Hello, Aaron. Nice to see you. Join the Twitch stream for better quality. Also, if anything gets blurry here and so on, right? That's a good idea. So I will kind of assume that I'm done with this first iteration, and therefore I can now just edit this, remove the WIP, which stands for work in progress, uh, save that, and I will actually merge this pull request. And as you see, you know, I am always giving things some thought, right? I just don't act, and you know, I have to, you know, consider every aspect of my workflow and process. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, building software is not just about coding; it's about many other things, right? And one thing that I was just about to miss, actually, is that there is some commented out code here. I do not want to include that. And also, there is, of course, this ongoing discussion whether we should include yarn lock into version control. I would, and there are, you know, basically two main camps here. Some people say that we should, some people say we shouldn't. Um, I I am leaning toward not including that into version control. Therefore, I will remove that from this particular branch, and I will fix that debugger statement that hangs around there, even though it's um, even if it's uh, commented out, there's no need for it to hang around. So here I am, and I had that debugger here, right? So I'm going to remove that, and I will go into my git ignore, and I will add yarn lock to git ignore, and I will now just check git status, and we can see that we modified both these files. But I also, so once a file is actually already included in or checked into version control, it is not just that easy that I just add it to git ignore. There's actually one other step that needs to be undertaken, and that is to remove it like actively remove it from under version control. So I need to issue git rm, and then cached cached, and I think I need to force it, and then just say yarn lock. Right. So now if I do git status, we can see that we deleted yarn lock. We didn't physically delete it, because if we check ls, it's still there, right? But we just removed it from under version control. So that's what we need to do, right? So now I just want to git add everything and git status again, just a sanity check. You know, you always want to do that. And we're good to go to make a commit, git ci, and then am, and then some cleaning, you know, dot. We didn't really do anything in this commit, but rather cleaned up some stuff, right? So now I can do git push origin BMI functionality, and we can see here that this is no longer valid. There's a refresh button here on my GitHub, so I can just refresh this, and we can see that we added yarn lock. We have all code nicely formatted. There's no problems here. It's a very simple implementation. I could have removed those extra lines here, but I won't worry about it. We have a nice little thing, and then we deleted everything from yarn lock, so that's why this one is still visible. I will just go on and merge this one like this, and I will switch over to my master branch. I am on my master, and then here I will check out my master, git check out master, and I will pull everything down from my remote. Git pull origin master. Right, and these things are, these are commands that you will be issuing over and over and over again throughout the bootcamp, throughout the rest of the preparatory course, throughout the rest of your careers. So therefore, it makes sense to have abbreviations, so you don't have to type git checkout, but rather git co, and so on for the most common tasks. You probably want to have some aliases set up, and we do have that in the setup instructions for you. If I'm not totally mistaken, in the first section of the course, we did set up some stuff. If not, I can share that knowledge with you at some point. And then, of course, there's another use case for combining commands. Like if you have some tasks that you often do, like see, I notoriously make typos in my commit messages. So, and sometimes when I work on a feature branch, I create a lot of commits, and at the end, perhaps I see that now I should squash them together, like bundle all commits together. So I have certain aliases and certain combined or compound commands set up on my computer, so I can fix those problems easily. But more on that at some other point. So we should be good to go, and I'm on the master branch, so I just want to run Cypress to make sure that I am up and running with everything. And I'm just gonna run this integration spec. This should go green for me, but who knows? As a sanity check, you always want to run this. There's no need for me to create a new branch and start working on something without knowing that I'm in a green state, as I call this, right? So that's good. Thank you for that. We are good to go on some extended functionality. So we're going to stop this. We're going to kill the process, and we're going to check out a new branch. So I was just going to do git checkout a new branch, and I will call it extended functionality. Right. It's ambiguous enough, Let's go with that. Okay, so what is it I want to do? Well, I would argue that in my BMI feature, I don't need to create a new file or a new test file, because this is a very small application, very, very narrow domain, right? And everything is happening on one single view. What I would like my user to know is that not only do I want my user to get the BMI value, but also a message that assesses his BMI value in terms of looking it up in the normative data table and telling this user whether he is underweight or overweight or what have you, right? So we have that data available to us. If we just go to let's see, if we go to the description of the challenge itself, we had something, or the BMI, right? No, that was in the beginning, in the introduction, right? So we say that this guy is, we were on 26 something, right? 28.62, 28.62. So that is overweight because we are in this span, right? So we could write a test for this and say that this is expected to display classification info or message classification message. So we would basically copy this text and say you are considered overweight. What was it? Was it overweight? Right, overweight. You are considered overweight. Right. In this case. Fair enough? Fair enough. All right. And we're going to place this in the same div, nothing else. No need for us to create a new section for this message or what have you, right? So if we run this now, so we're just going to throw yarn Cypress. This should give us an error, of course, because we are not dealing with this in any way. Right, so this one is erroring out. Right. So how can we do that? Well, we could, in our BMI calculator, we could ask this guy not to return a value itself, but rather return an object, and we could say return this instead, and we would say value, value would be the BMI value to fix. So we would have to, we will have to go in here, and we will not call we will call this, instead of BMI value, I will call this assessment, and then I will say your BMI value is assessment value, right? Value. That's what we are returning, right? So now we should be in the same state again, right? So this one is still going green for me. So I changed the way I, what I return from my from my logical file here. So that is just a small little refactoring. So I would like to say, apart from this value, I would like to return another key, and I will say message, and that would be, let's say, no, in good shape, right? Just for development purposes, just to have something to return. And then I would enter this BMI UI, and then put a dot here, and then you will say you were considered, and then string interpolate, assessment, and then message, right? And now if we rerun this, then we will fail on something else, but it is actually displaying something here, right? So let's see if we can fix this altogether to have this guy go green. So we're just gonna return overweight just for the sake of it and see if the test passes now or not. It does pass now, right? Okay, but that's hard-coded value, so that's not what we want. And again, I want to stop here for a second, because in a real test-driven development process, we would stop with the acceptance tests for now and dive into unit testing this particular function, right? Because we need to make sure that this actually does what it's supposed to do. So let's see if we can extract this into a separate function. So we will say, we will just return a message, and we will say let message equal, and can we say check classification, right? That would be the result of that function. So we will say check classification, and we will pass in the BMI value. Well, for now we don't have to pass it in either, right? And that would be a comma there, sorry. And then I will just return return overweight from this one. So I will invoke this function. Whatever this function returns will be stored in message, and then we're just going to return that message from this calculate, right? That's pretty straightforward. And let's see if this works for now. It does not. Check classification is not defined. So we're going to have to say this dot classification. Oh, sorry. This dot classification. And now it's passing, right? So that's how you invoke functions in your own object by it's bound to this object. Okay, so but this is also still hard coded, right? So we have to figure out how can we actually look up this table. And there are, as usual, multiple ways of doing that. We could use a switch statement, we could use a if statement, or what have you, right? Let's start with an if statement, right? So first of all, we need the value, of course, right? So we need to pass in this value as a as an argument into this check classification function, because this function is built upon the value. Without it, we won't be able to assess anything, right? So how can we go about and do that? There are multiple ways of fixing that, and we will just take a look on one of them. So right, we don't even have to parse anything in float, but basically what we can say, if we go with a simple if statement, we could say if BMI value is lower than 18.5, then we return underweight. And then we can say else if, and then another condition. We could say BMI value is greater than 18.5, and BMI value in Ruby, this would be much easier, because in Ruby we have the between command, so you could call that between those two. Here we don't have that. So if the BMI value is greater than 18.5 but lower than Where is that documentation? Lower than 24, right, 24.9. So it would be this shit. I always make this 12 or equal 24.9, and this would be this, I think, right? Right. Or equal, right? No. Shoots. No, this. It's only greater, right? Sorry. And then so we return normal, which is a weird thing, but that's the way they do. And then we go another else if, and here we would say BMI value is 20 is great is or equals 25, and right, and final and the BMI value is greater than 30 and equal 30, right? Then we return overweight, right? And then else, and I don't need to pass in any value. We just say return obese. Now in our normative data we have obesity class 1, 2 and extreme, but we don't want to have to deal with that, because then you don't have to watch me type all those if statements, you know. So let's simplify this. Right, 29.9 actually, 29.9, right, right. So let's run this now. Yeah, and it passes. And if I now would change this around like this, so always when you write a lot of code and all of a sudden your stuff is passing, you should be very careful. Perhaps you did something wrong, so you want to break the test. Always, you know, break shit. It's good. This should not pass now. It does not pass because now we're showing obese, right? So we are good to go on that. So we can just change this like this, and we should be good to go again, right? And so that's a nice little extension, and you know, I feel that I'm doing. I get enough from Cypress to keep me in the loop when I code, when I use Cypress as in my workflow as part um, of my way of defining functionality and building. But I would say that complementing um, acceptance tests with unit tests is not bad, because at some point during this development, even though this is a simple thing, you are kind of lost and on your own. All of this has been written without really knowing, or at least following, the test-driven development approach, because we didn't do unit tests. I could take your time and set up a framework for unit testing, but there's one problem with it now when we do vanilla JavaScript, because we are actually not doing any exports, and Mocha it's kind of hard to unit test vanilla JavaScript. It is doable, of course, everything is doable, but in my opinion, it's a little bit out of scope for what we are doing at the moment, and especially at this level in the course, I would not bother with that. But I hope that you can see that that the acceptance tests approach at least brings a lot stability, and good things to the table, and and um, and helps us in our development. Seva, what would you say about that? All right, I don't hear you. I don't know why. Do you, David? Do you hear him? No.
That's
So
probably because of now. Do you hear me now?
now we do. Now we do. Now we do.
Yeah. Okay. It's like just my headphones. For some reason, Ubuntu doesn't understand them.
Okay.
So, what was it about test-driven development?
Yeah, and acceptance tests in particular.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It actually was like before applying to the course, it was interested. I was interested in how exactly like some complicated piece of software can be tested, and I never really kind of Googled it, and I didn't know that such things like Cypress exist. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, and I understand that I have to kind of force myself to do it a little bit because I'm kind of used to just diving into coding, and trying all the functions and all the stuff. And of course, it's a very different way of doing things. And with the addition of version control, it also kind of changes the flow a lot, but it makes a lot of sense to do it and to just to kind of sink in, in the reflexes. So you just do it as normal, but that's like requires some practice.
That's a very good insight there, and I, I just have to emphasize how right you are, because it is so easy to just go on and, oh, a BMI calculator challenge, let's just code away and just fix it. It's a very easy thing. It's like, you do a little bit of calculation, you do a lookup in the classification table or normalized data, and boom, you output it. Who cares, right? Exactly. Who cares? There is no reason for me to ask you to build a BMI calculator, even at this stage when you guys are new at this. Uh, it's nonsense, of course, right? I would never take up your time. You're an adult man, and why would I bother you with yet another BMI calculator? What I'm looking for here is to practice the workflow. To as you say, this is new, combining acceptance tests with version control and the entire approach to things we do. That is the thing, right? And of course, practicing JavaScript, because it is still a coding exercise, right? So now, getting all of that versus just practicing JavaScript, I would say, practicing version control, acceptance tests, and JavaScript is better for you. It gives you better value for your money, and better value for your time and energy than just practicing JavaScript, right? Complexity grows and is, yeah, of course, but that's the point of it, right? Thank you for your insights there. Cling on to this, right? Really, if you get an urge, hey, F it, let's just implement the whole thing. Don't do that. I actually made a mistake here, but that's because I do not unit test this. I shouldn't have written this entire if statement in one single go. I should have, written basically this part, the one that returns overweight. Then I should have written another test where I input other values. You understand? And then return normal and underweight and obese. So I would probably, if this was a really sharp and really advanced, project, then I would, start to write tests for all eventualities and all the data and so on. But I cut some corners because I don't want to be too strict with you guys this early in the game. But later on, we will of course bump up the complexity. Like if you would make a pull request, let's say week 6, 7 in the bootcamp, that covers only only parts of the possible scenarios that could happen, we would comment on that, say, hey, there are some tests missing here, and you should probably go back to the drawing board and make sure that it works. Not because it's the end of the world, but because this is a training exercise, right? Because we practice things.
May I also ask a question, just
Go ahead.
a simple one? And how do you approach writing tests? Like as much as you can beforehand, before you start coding, or it's kind of more like code test, code test, code test, code test, because it's kind of.
That's a very good question. Let me get back to that just after David gives his insight, because this calls for a for an explanation, and it's a really good question. But anyway, David, your thoughts on this session, and also the refactoring of the functionality, and what acceptance tests do for us.
I never done any tests before, as I told you before, but via my calculator I have done it, so I know the structure, how you build it. But it's quite easy if you read the documentation. But when you put it with the tests, it's totally different for me. It's very interesting, and I'm eager to learn more now. So that's my insight.
All right, good. But
Thank
does
you.
it does it take a lot of effort to kind of unlearn or learn again to this flow? I assume that your instinct would be, hey, let's just put out some code and let's just fix this.
I try not to like remember the things I know, so I try to learn the things you are telling me. You know what I mean? I don't want to do the BMI calculator as I used to do. I want to learn the way you do. So
All
this
right.
is better for me, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, and I appreciate that you trust me.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
one of the things that I say in the presentation when we talk about the bootcamp itself. Just trust the process, because
Of course. Yeah.
we mix a lot of backgrounds. Some people are like totally new to coding, and some people have some coding experience. And just, to be totally transparent, I can tell you that from a coach perspective, it's actually easier to learn somebody who hasn't programmed to code
Yeah.
than relearn or unlearn certain behavior and so. But it's, you're a great guy, David, and I know that
Thank
you're
you.
very committed to following this structure. It's really important, right?
Thank you.
And to the others who are listening now, let's think about it now. Some students might suffer from this imposter syndrome, or, am I really good at this? And hey, we have other students that are so much better with previous experience. Now we all struggle through this. If you're totally new, it's totally new to you. If you already have some experience, and I think you can pull David aside and then have a chat with him. He also struggles because there is some unlearning that needs to be done, and so on. So there's no easy streak uh, in this endeavor in any way. But okay, let's thank you for sharing that, David. Let's get back to Seva's question. Okay, so uh, as a good parent, I would tell you this: always write your test before. That's the test-driven development doctrine, right? You write your test beforehand, and that's the official standpoint. Like, that I should tell you, but reality is not that simple. Let me be totally honest and transparent with you. Now, what I am looking at is to go through certain processes. Like, I emphasize this thing that writing tests make me think, and make me think critically, and about all the aspects. So what I always do is basically to follow the process that you've seen me do, um, on this one, but also on the FizzBuzz setup and so on, right? I I sit down and I write a test that forces me to ask a few questions myself, a few questions, and then answer those questions and put it down in writing. The first test I write is like a to-do list of the the things that I want to get out from the software, like, describe its behavior, uh, but also uh, describe the main path, like what we usually call it the happy path, meaning that the user will actually input some data, and he will not say 2,000 kilos, but actually something that is manageable, and he won't say that he is 1.86. So misunderstand me whether this is a centimeter or meter. So I write a happy path test, because it helps me clarify my thoughts, and set out the main strategy for what's going on, and what I want to get out from the functionality, whether it's a simple one like this BMI, or just piece of functionality in a much larger system. And so I write that, and I make it pass. I keep on running it, and I get some errors, and I make it pass. And in the best of worlds, I would just keep on going until it goes green, right? But what if I change my mind? What if I don't want to say your BMI value is something um, like this, but I want to say something else? What if I don't want to call this button weight or height? What if I want to use IDs like I did? I did change my mind yesterday. And what if I change my mind? I don't want this to be in centimeters, but rather in meters, so it would be 1.86, and so on and so forth, right? Then you have to alter your tests, of course, right? And what if I come up with another scenario? Let's say once I'm done with the with the testing of the main path, um, I come up with some stuff and so on. Is it really necessary for me to avoid adding, let's say, some error handlers uh, before I actually have a test? Well, I would say that I always strive to write tests before I write implementation, but it is not that easy. Sometimes you get a little ahead of yourself and so on. But the thing is that as soon as I start to write implementation code that is not covered by tests, then a situation occurs that I refer to as technical debt, right? I owe to the application or to my own workflow to actually cover it in tests at some point. And um, I, you know, I would argue that once you break away from this main, you know, flow of actually writing tests beforehand and start to write implementation tests, and you tell yourself that I will I will do this later. I would write a scenario for this. I would, and even if you're smart about it, you add a post-it note, on your forehead, no, whatever, or you write it up in your Trello board or your Pivotal Tracker or whatever. I can guarantee you that at some point this technical debt will be so big that you will just feel overwhelmed by this. Oh shit, I put in like 8 hours worth of coding, and I made a lot of progress on the system, but I didn't cover this in test, so I need to catch up. And that I need to catch up often leads to let's do it mañana, or let somebody else do it, and you end up not doing it at all. um, so discipline is the key here. You don't necessarily have to write the tests beforehand if you have a clear idea what sort of implementation you want to build. But I would definitely say that as soon as you have built it, let's just cover that in test. Writing one scenario is a 10 or 15 minute endeavor. Writing 10 scenarios is not. That's now then we're talking about a little bit of stress, feelings of being a bit overwhelmed, and so on, right? And then you go into the scrum meeting with your coaches and you start to bullshit us. Oh yeah, it was an experimental feature and all of that stuff, and then you just don't do it basically. And then and I've seen that. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen. That uh, people accumulate so much technical debt that they just feel overwhelmed by this, and they get into bad habits and so on. And I actually heard um, a student ask us once that, let's say that I write a lot of tests and they are passing, and then I start to style the user interface, which means that some of the things that are here actually change. Perhaps the name changes, or IDs, or if you use some external libraries for CSS, it might not even be an input field or a selector or what have you. It could be a different HTML tag, and which is of course something that is totally doable. It can happen, and you can figure out what it is, and you can write good tests for it, but it takes a little bit of effort. But I had this student to actually ask us, so I had these tests passing, and I changed my interface. Do I need to fix the tests once they start to fail? And I would say, of course, because your interface changed, and end-to-end tests are about interfaces. Of course, you need to change them. But she was like, nah, I don't feel like it. So that was a red flag for me, of course, because I would definitely argue that software with good test coverage is a good thing, right? And there are uh, actually situations where when you measure test coverage. We will go through that in the bootcamp, because it's a matter of quality assurance. You can go to your customer and you say that I have a system with like over 90% test coverage. So, 90% of all the code you've written is actually covered in tests. So that's a good thing. And I will just start a process. We don't necessarily have to go through everything, but I can tell you this. Uh, let's see. No, yeah, let's run this. Let's run Cucumber. This is an older project that is not using Cypress, but we're building a lot of automated tests for it that uses the Chrome driver. So there are other ways to test user interfaces, and this one is really fast, and it's a huge test suite. And it basically interacts with this application. It opens up several windows. We have a chat functionality here, so in order to test the chat functionality, we actually have to have two browsers, because people need to chat to each other, right? And so on. So we are doing a lot of things here. We have some wait time built in, just to make sure that the the application has enough time to actually respond to certain things that are happening in the background. Here at this point, you can see that there are two windows open, and they will interact with each other, and so on and so forth. Now this test suite actually involves it taps into a system that measures code coverage, test coverage, sorry. Uh, and so at the end of this run, we will see how many scenarios were being executed, and how big amount, or what big percentage of the entire code base has been covered in tests. Uh, it's Now, I usually say that this kind of test is something that you can use with in your client work, because you don't necessarily have to run the entire test suite. I can also slow it down, so you can run automated tests in client meetings, and have a communication with the client, just to ensure that whatever they asked for is actually being delivered when you work with for money, basically, before you issue an invoice. So you can tell them that, during this sprint we set out to do this and that, and here is what we did, and so on. So that's a really good tool to use in your delivery process as well. And of course, before you push out things to production, you want to make sure that your test suite is covering all the different angles, how users can interact with it. And I usually say that, world would be such an easy place if there were no end users, or if all people were actually 100% rational. If it says height, you input height, and you don't input a text field or something, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case. We have to deal with humans, and humans are unpredictable at many occasions. So this one it's a really big test suite. As you can see, we've run a few hundred small tests already, and we should be done in just a minute. I'm really trying to fill out this time with some small talk. I think I'm doing fairly okay. I can tell you about this system. So this system is a business-to-business procurement platform that would allow businesses to market their services and products, and also other businesses to purchase that. and we have some unique features built in here. And one of them is multi-language support. I don't know if you saw that flashing by. We have Arabic, Russian, Polish, and different interfaces. And the idea is that, let's say that you are an Persian um, builder. Let's say you're a constructor and you need some bookkeeping, and you operate here in Sweden, right? And you need some bookkeeping help or legal help, and having a Swedish lawyer explain things to you might just sound like Greek. So perhaps, just perhaps, you would like to hire a lawyer that knows Swedish law but can speak Farsi to you. Do you understand? Or Russian or what have you, right? Polish. So this platform uh, looks into the description of the company, and because when a supplier signs up, he can tell that within my organization we speak multiple languages, and people who are requesting services can say that I would love to get bids in, let's say, Russian, right? And so that offer would be pushed out to companies where this language is actually present or spoken. So the tagline is to turn multicultural competence into a competitive advantage, rather than just being constantly reminded that we are foreigners in this country. It's better if we can actually use our skills for something that is good. Now the test has passed, and we have 65 scenarios, 788 test cases, and we have a 91.94% test coverage on this one. I would say that I would love to aim for 95 at least. But anything over 80 is good, I would say. Everything over 90 is really good. You can never reach 100%, not in a system of this size. That's just not possible. All right, that does it for us at this point. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you learned something, and thank you chat, and thank you Twitch followers. I of course forgot to record this one, so I will make sure that I send out the YouTube, because I will upload this to YouTube and send out that link to you guys so you can check it out. Yeah, I see you in a few, because we will have a follow-up. See ya, and thank you very much, stream. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoy the lecture and my talk about test-driven development. If you are interested in seeing more of this stuff, just follow my schedule, and let's code together and build some pretty nice shit. Take it easy, guys.